general session. Counselor,
Yes, sir.
we're gonna attend to that meeting, so.
We just adjourn now, right?
You're just adjourned, yeah.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, looking for support?
Support.
Support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, special meeting is adjourned. 10 minutes before the regular board meeting, thank you.
This isn't it, we don't staple that thing on the agenda.
I'll write it right now.
Okay,
What does that do?
this is gonna be,
Mr. Pizak. regular board meeting of May 14th, 2019. At this time, please turn your cell phones to silent. If yours rings, you get to buy pizza. I would like to call to order and like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you do roll call, please?
Mr. Colwell?
Here.
Mr. Lilly is here. Mr. Roman?
Here.
Mr. Ruggles is absent. Liz Smith?
Here.
Mike Powell?
Here.
Andrea Voorhees.
Present.
Very good. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda, Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the following additions or corrections. To add resolution to opt out, which should be 11G. We're going to remove both items from executive session, both 13A and B.
Okay.
We have a new list of bills dated 5/14/19. I believe those are on your desk. We're going to take off item 10B. I believe all of you have a copy of an update of the development agreement for item 11D. And also, we're going to add item 11H, which has to do with the dismissal of a lawsuit.
Okay, I have,
Now make a motion to approve the consent agenda,
as amended,
I'm sorry, the
As-
agenda with the
As
corrections as
amended.
stated.
I had a question, Mr. Supervisor.
Yes, sir.
Why are we removing 10B?
because the state doesn't have the paperwork, we can't do it, can't proceed. Okay,
I'll support the motion.
okay, we have motion of support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, thank you. Item number 5, public comment. You got 3 minutes to state your case up here, typically for something that's not on the agenda, because generally items that are on the agenda, we usually have a little discussion. So if anyone would like to come up and approach the podium, they may speak.
Do I have the time thing, Sean? You got it right here. You can do it today. if you want.
buddy.
I
You
shouldn't
wanna
take
do it?
but 30 seconds. I just wanted to say it's Police Week, and I appreciate everything that's been done so far. We've gotten tons of food. We're being fed very well. A lot of cookies, pizza, which we all enjoy. The pastor brought in some tasty desserts, which is awesome, and everything is.
You should have said desserts.
You can head over. It's over. It's over at the police
All right.
department. Feel free to stop by.
Motion to postpone.
I just want to say how much I appreciate it from the citizens. The officers really appreciate it. We feel loved from the community, and I can't express how much we appreciate everybody giving us some of their time and some of their effort and their food and whatnot. So I just want to say thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes, stand and,
No, is this the time to speak about special assessments?
I mean, you
It would be.
can say something if you like, yes. I
It
mean,
depends on which one.
otherwise, is there,
Is it on
is
the
it in
agenda?
reference to the one that's on the agenda?
I received a letter that my taxes would be assessed a certain amount for lake weed control, and I want to protest that.
Okay,
I don't know.
that's,
if
this is not, this isn't the time. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Yes.
I don't know if this is the platform to do this, and I'll get up there if you want me to, but I had a guy come to our house the other day and throw something into our stream that came on our private property, and then walk over to our pond, our private property. And our mail lady happened to be coming at the same time. I got a hold of her. She said they pulled into the park on McKeechee Road. We live on McKeechee Road. There's a little bloomer park in there.
Yes.
He was parked in there. I pulled in and asked him. I went by our stream and there was something floating in it. It looked like an Arby's bag. So I asked him if he would like to come back, pull it out of my stream, or if he wanted me to come to the township. And he jumped out of his truck and he said, "Oh no, we got a grant from the state to put mosquito pellets in all the wetlands in White Lake. And I said, really? We were never notified. You came on private property. He said, oh no, we're starting in the back because the mosquitoes are gonna be so bad this year. What's up with that?
Well, first of all, we do have, this is not really the time for a discussion of this,
Okay.
but there is a process, yes, for the mosquitoes, but I have no idea what you're referring to, and I would have to look into it, and I can't even respond to it.
Okay, then who would I talk to at the township?
We would have to get into our DPS director and find out where things are at, who was what, and if it was even one of our people that was doing it, okay?
I don't have one on me, but you can call the.
We need your name and address for the record, though.
Okay, my name is, do you want me to tell you? Oh, it's
Yes, for the court recorder,
It's
please.
Patricia Dove Pat, and the address is 2800 McKeechee Road, White Lake, Michigan.
We'll be happy to address any of that. You can come in and talk to us.
I mean, I think it's a good thing if that's
Yeah,
legit,
there is.
but it kind of scared me.
Yeah, well, we just have to make sure that it's a legitimate person that's doing it, so we'll have, we
His
can.
name was Tom,
It's,
We like that.
it's legitimate.
because I asked
I
him.
think you called our office already, and I believe we spoke.
You're not Jason.
No.
I talked to
Mayor.
Jason Hudson.
Okay,
He's
that
our
was our
ordinance
code enforcement.
officer.
Is he?
Okay, well, we'll be happy to address that for you, but, and I'm sure the water GPS department will be happy to fill you in on all the nuts and bolts of that whole program.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Item 6, consent agenda. Mr. Clerk?
Make a motion to approve consent agenda with the addition of the new list of bills dated 5/14/19.
I have a motion to approve. Looking for support?
Support.
And support, motion, support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. Item 7, minutes. Approval of the minutes of special board meeting April 16, 2019.
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve the special board minutes of April 16, 2019 as submitted.
I have a motion to approve. Looking for support.
I'll support that.
I have support from Andrew Voorhees. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. Minutes, item 7B, approval of minutes of the regular board meeting of April 16th, 2019.
Mr. Supervisor, if I could, there are a couple items I'd like to point out and have my colleagues decide whether they should be changed or not.
Very
On
good.
page 7, the second paragraph, second line, it starts with them, period, and then this is trustee Powell, that's myself talking, it says, he highly asks and recommends that even though it says bidded, it really should be bid this way, B-I-D-D, not bited, in that one. Then on page 9, turn to page 9, right at the very bottom of the page, I believe, and maybe the clerk's office can correct me if I'm wrong, but it says, I'm concerned if the budget comes in $20,000 over budget, not 20,00. And I think that's just a,
Yeah,
that's
Mr.
just a
Zero.
typo. It's
Yeah.
missed a zero. It is?
Yes.
Oh, yes, thank you. So Mike Lufkin, the last, his last name. Then on page 11, item number 1, down midway in the page there, it says that, let's see if I can get it here. In the last line of item number 1, it's got 3 lines on it. Of costs, therefore, I'm just a engineer, so therefore should probably have an E on the end of it. But all right, and then lastly on page 15, paragraph F, third paragraph under F, last line, the resolution, comma, but has no problem. It's going to sound weird. Not, but has no problem with trustee Smith receiving recognition. Do you see that, Mr. Supervisor? The last line, it says, but has not problem with trustee Smith. It should say, but has no problem
Has
with
no
trustee
problem.
Smith.
For clarification, the verbiage probably should have been trustee Smith sponsored the resolution. That would make the most sense.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily speak properly all the time anyway, so I have no problem leaving it the way it is.
Yeah, we'll leave it the way it
The
is.
only comment I have on your corrections is that resolution, because usually the resolutions are taken right from the resolution title, and what the therefore is in relation to cost therefore. So
You may be
it's not
incorrect,
the
Michael.
therefore, the conclusory therefore, it's the legalese therefore.
That's what I was concerned about, is it, so it's again, is it an H or a J, you know?
I'm not sure what the resolution says, but it should be consistent with the actual resolution.
And it shall remain.
And I'm good with that.
Okay. Mr. Roman.
Mr. Supervisor, I also had a few corrections on these minutes. On page 3, down on the bottom, under new business, A, 2019 OPEB employer contributions. It reads Treasurer Romans. Need to get rid of the S on Romans.
God help us.
God help us.
One is enough. No.
And then on page 8, 3/4 of the way down, capital A, public hearing regarding confirmation of assessment roll for settlers, needs to read settlers. So one of those E's needs to be removed.
Well, we really put a few of these, didn't we?
On page 10, 3/4 of the way, well, second paragraph from the end, it starts reading, Treasurer Roman doesn't want to see a delay. He indicated just go with the 160,000 as long as the residents know if there is cost overruns, there will most likely, and then insert the word BE, most likely be a reassessment. That's all I had.
Good.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, a motion and support as, and I'll say support as amended.
And I'll support as amended.
Support as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, minutes of the, 7C, minutes of the special board meeting of April 23rd, 2019. Mr. Roman.
Mr. Supervisor, I had a correction on page 1. Under, down near the bottom, under the wording public hearing, second line, Huron Valley Schools, 2019 Drinking Water Evolving
Oh,
Fund.
yeah.
We need to put an R in front of the word evolving to make it revolving. I'm not sure if I had anything else. Let me flip through.
That's what you just did.
Yeah, true. It should be
You want me
revolving.
to help you?
Yeah, we got a.
Tom
we got a-
Traciak on
Page 6.
page
Yeah, we
six.
got a couple of them. I see.
Page 6, bottom paragraph. Third line down, it says Mr. Tom Tracy. Needs to read Mr. Tom Traciak, Traciak. On page 7, second from the last paragraph, under Treasurer Roman, if we can remove the last word that says okay. Page 8, first sentence. Treasurer Roman, yeah, that makes sense. Probably immaterial should read probably immaterial. That's all I had, Mr. Supervisor.
And we had another one also on page 1 where it says, right down under public hearing, it should be 2019 Drinking Water Revolving Fund, not Evolving Fund.
Correct.
Okay, all right, you did catch that one?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. And then on page 9 of 14, second sentence down, it still puts us well within a cost-effective service of water compared to other communities.
Which paragraph was that, right?
Second
Second paragraph.
on page 9 where it says
Okay.
costive.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we got them all. All right, looking for support.
Support the motion to approve as amended.
Okay. Anybody else? Last time. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just caught one thing. I don't have them with me, but I could provide them. So on page 14, I did speak in a little bit more detail on paragraph 2, and I gave some actual facts and figures. I would like those actual facts and figures included in the minutes.
I will have a conversation with the clerk's office on that, because I don't have
Right, I mean, they're on the tape, but if I could have actually, if we can amend where the board would be agreeable, that I could send those to the clerk's office and go back and be accurate on the tape and have the
They
figures
should-
included.
Could be reviewed, yeah.
And then not approve the meeting
Not
minutes
approve them
today?
at this meeting, yeah.
Or do you just want
Well, I don't want to, it is the record, so we don't want to necessarily not have it. So we could rescind these from this particular meeting and resubmit at the next meeting.
What you'd like to do?
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, I think that's what we'll do. We'll rescind the minutes of 7C from this meeting, and
You actually have to have the withdrawal of the motion.
I'm going to withdraw the motion. Somebody needs to withdraw the motion.
I'll withdraw my support.
Okay, there we go.
Do we need a motion to, no?
No.
No motion
No,
needed?
Nothing, okay.
Just remember to bring it back.
I'll remember to bring it
next
back, yeah, we'll make those corrections. Okay, moving on to item number 8, presentation.
I'd just like to make
Yeah,
a
big
comment
part.
before
Yes,
we
sir.
go with, I've asked many times for the board, particularly with the minutes, and I know our secretary does a great job. They come to our office, Kathy reads them, I read them. It's really easy to overlook with the length of these things, but I've asked many times if those that have these corrections, if they would just email those to us, that we will have the corrected copy at the board agenda. We waste a lot of time
Yeah.
correcting minutes of the meeting, and I take full responsibility for those corrections, but it would make it much easier to give us those in an email that we can correct them and have those copies for everybody, so.
And
Thank you.
I know typically that happens, but for some reason. Okay, moving right along. Okay, our Pamela, I'll let you lead.
Okay, thank you.
And you can make the introductions of your staff. And Pam is from Plant Moran, and she has just finished our 2018 annual financial statement. Mr. Lilly, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I just, we've always, this is kind of the annual occasion where we get our report card, so to speak, and I'm happy with the 3 people that have joined us tonight to present the audit, that you guys do a remarkable job, and I want to thank you for your hard work. So.
Thank you. My name is Pam Hill. I am an audit partner with Plant Moran in our governmental practice. I have with me here today Amanda Kronk, who is a senior manager in our governmental practice, and Chris Gilbert, who was the audit in charge this year, soon to be manager. But so Chris pretty much did all the work, and now we're going to get up here and kind of talk about the process and how it went. You should have in your packets the financial statements, which were the thicker bound documents, which were about 60 pages. Every year, the township continues to implement new standards that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So we did put together a slide presentation, as we have in the past, to talk through the financials at a high level versus going through all the 60 pages. Just for the rest of the board's information, we did spend probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours meeting with the 3 full-time elected officials to go through the drafts of these statements in a lot of detail. Happy to answer any questions as we go through, but otherwise we had planned to kind of go through them at a high level. You should also have with you kind of the smaller stapled copy, which is the letter addressed to the Board of Trustees. We will go through that. We know you've had some time to take a look at it. So again, kind of high level, big picture. We will take a look at that. We did spend over 300 hours this year auditing the books and records of the township. Again, for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2018. So as you can imagine, that's quite a bit of time that we're out here. And then also a lot of time that your team spends getting ready for us to come out here. So we just wanted to thank Rick, Mike, Terry, and especially Elaine and Dawn and Lisa. They handle basically the majority of our questions, and a lot of the work is really done by them to get ready for us. So I just wanted to thank them. Their professionalism is very much appreciated and helps to make the audit go smoothly. We have a very good working relationship with the township. Many conversations throughout the year, which really helps us to be prepared and in the loop on what's going on at the township to make the audit a lot more efficient. So we appreciate that relationship as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and he's going to start going over the graph presentation.
Thanks, Pam. So I'm going to go through the graph presentation starting on the very next slide, slide 2. And the title of this slide, General Fund Revenue and Transfers. So this is real high level, but just looking over the last 5 years on the performance of the general fund, particularly the revenue. And as you can see, this has fluctuated a little bit over the last 5 years. We tend to focus on current year and prior year being 2018. So I guess looking at this, your largest revenue sources, some would think that the property taxes are the largest revenue source, but for the township, if you look here, it's this big teal box at the bottom, and at the bottom of the table, it's actually state revenue. And this is comprised of state shared revenue, miscellaneous state grants, and other items. So this is the township's largest revenue source, and it's just over half of the revenue of the township. And this was the biggest increase this year. It went up just about $1 million, and this is in majority due to some additional grants that the township received in 2018, most notably a road paving grant for $750,000, and there were some other miscellaneous grants as well that made up that increase. Also, I wanted to mention that the township is expecting a lot of growth, and as a result, they are applying for and receiving grants. So for various projects. So this is, the result of that. Any questions on this slide before I move to the expenditures? All right, next slide. Basically same idea, but just general fund expenditures. So this fluctuated just a little bit. So what I would like to point out here is that general government is by far the largest category here. And it makes up, in 2018, it was just over $3 billion of the expenditures, so well over half, almost, 3/4 of the, expenditures of the township. And much of this increase was, funds used from the grants that were received on various projects and equipment acquisitions. That was the largest increase. And one thing I'll also mention here is that the township does do a good job budgeting, and has been very cognizant in budgeting for projects when their funds do allow for it. So any questions on this graph before we move over to the next one? So we'll go to, go ahead,
I was just going to say, I think that's a good point that Chris made. So this is just looking at actual expenditures. It doesn't compare where the township ended up compared to budget. And the township actually came in the general fund over $500,000 under budget, so over 10% under budget. So I think as a board, you should feel very good about the decisions that are being made and the diligence on behalf of the department heads and others that are really watching the budget and looking for additional ways to save. And so it doesn't necessarily show up here, but it's evident in some other schedules within the financial statements.
Right. All right, so the next graph is really a comparison of general fund annual expenditures as compared to the unassigned fund balance, which is the funds available for the township to use. So one thing I'll mention here is that the township has earmarked some funds for basically for road improvements, capital projects, the other post-employment benefits, contributions. So those are not included here. So exclusive of those amounts, that's what this slide is showing. In orange there is the funds available to be used. And management, what I'll say here is that management has been monitoring this historically and currently moving forward to ensure that, you know, this is reasonable in line with their short-term and long-term goals and plans.
So I would just add kind of high-level perspective on the general fund and in the township in general, how it ended up. I think that the township had a good year. You know, some of it was because of these expenditure cuts and the things that you're watching. But overall, from a financial standpoint, the township's in a very strong financial position. Now, that being said, as Chris had mentioned, and you all know, the township is a growing community. And with a growing community comes a lot of unique challenges. I think what that means, though, is that with all the decreases in, you know, property tax revenues and things like that, you all have made a lot of the hard decisions over the last 10 years to get you to this point so that you're able to say, we are, you know, we are in a good position to move forward with the growth that we have. So if you hadn't made a lot of those hard decisions, you know, 10 years ago or so, you wouldn't be in this position to be able to say, we're in a pretty good, sound financial spot to be able to move forward with our growth. And so I think as board members, you should feel good about that. Like I said, it was a lot of tough decisions, I think, to get you here. That being said, you know, with growth, you obviously have a lot of challenges in terms of infrastructure, legacy costs, just different things like that. So as you look forward for your long-term goals, and I know we spent a lot of time talking about this at the meeting, we had just making sure to keep that long-term focus in mind as you look forward. And I know oftentimes you look at a budget and it's a one-year kind of thing, and sometimes those long-term things can get lost. But I know your team has a really good handle on that, and I think you'll be hearing a lot more discussions about kind of long-term future and what those numbers might look like going forward. And we're happy to help on that, obviously, in any way if you have questions.
All right, yeah, next slide. So what this slide is showing is all governmental funds. Previous to this, we were looking at just the general fund, so all governmental fund expenditures. And the largest expenditure categories of the township in 2018 were public safety and rec and culture. Now, the largest increase, of course, was in rec and culture with the costs associated with the library construction project. So that's that big increase you'll see there. Outside of that, all the other categories were relatively consistent with the prior years.
Could I ask you a question on that, please?
Yes.
We at the board here don't necessarily consider the library expenses and costs as part of our budget. I see that you've included that in the township overall accounting here. Why is that, and how does that impact the township's evaluation?
So it has to be included because the township is the one that actually levied the millage to pay for the debt. It's a lot of kind of complicated accounting. I know we all spent quite a bit of time making sure that it was correct. Ultimately, it is the library's building. It is the library's responsibility for the maintenance, the operations, etc. Basically, what you have on your books, in order to facilitate the debt, you show the expense, and then you'll show that revenue coming in for the debt, the proceeds that you received. And then over time, the property tax millage will repay any expenses that you had related to the library. So it really doesn't impact when you're talking about the financial viability of the township.
Yep.
It's in a separate fund, it's accounted for separately, it's being tracked separately by the township. All of the invoices and the project management of that's being handled by the library. So when looking at the financial viability of the township, we don't really take that into account because you have a special dedicated millage specifically levied to pay back that debt. So the township will be made whole due to that.
Okay, but this will be tracked for in perpetuity now because until we pay those bonds off.
Correct.
So one thing so if we think about what the revenue side would look like, if we had a slide in here that said all governmental funds revenue, you would see the revenue for that debt issuance. So at the end of the fiscal year you're in now, those two items will essentially net each other out, if that makes sense. So to your point, it really won't reflect in the township's fund balance or net position, but as Pam mentioned, due to who issued the bonds and who's responsible for the millage, the township is helping the library with that process, if you will.
Okay, so not unlike the police and fire millage that we have, the library millage that is assessed, the township here is still ultimately responsible for the payment of those bonds if something happens to the library, correct?
Well, so the township, the way the debt millage works, and Lisa, if I say this incorrectly, jump in, but the way that the levy works is that you're allowed to levy the mill up to enough to pay the debt. So, and then as it gets closer to the point where the debt's going to be extinguished, you really kind of monitor that to make sure you don't over levy.
Okay.
But so in terms of specifically that bond, the township has the ability through that levy to levy what is needed to pay for that bond.
Okay. Are we responsible for we're not responsible for any of the operation of the library?
Correct.
So if something were to happen to where they didn't have enough funds to operate the library, that doesn't impact the township at all?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Guys, can I fairly say, maybe to make it simple, the dark blue portion under 2018 is pretty much what came out of the construction fund in 2018.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
And going forward, Mike, to your question, what you'll see once the construction's all over and you're just paying the debt, every year basically what you'll see is property tax revenue and then a debt payment out. So
Okay.
your balance will be fairly close to zero because it's impossible to levy exactly the amount of the debt payment.
Right.
But that number, is going to hover in the 100-ish, 1,000-ish, whatever range. So your in and your out every year will be relatively the same on a go-forward basis until that debt's paid off.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I actually have to go through a calculation, guys, to come up with that exact millage, based on exactly what Plant Moran is telling you. I'm only allowed to hold so much in excess funds over and above the bond payments. So, and as the township grows, hopefully that millage will shrink, so that each of us are paying a little bit less.
Just spread out.
Yeah.
Great question. All right, this very last slide is specifically focusing on the water fund and the operating revenue and expenses over the last 5 years. So the revenue is that blue bar, which has been relatively consistent over the last couple years. The expenses are what have increased from 2017 to 2018, but what this is mostly related to is that the fact that the township has adopted a new accounting pronouncement. So what that accounting pronouncement does is it changes how they record the other post-employment costs. So there's increased expense to get the increased liability on the books, essentially. So.
Thank you, Governor Schneider.
And our friend Gatsby, right?
Yeah. I think that's it for the graph package. Is there any more questions on this? Water fund, general fund?
Not at this time.
If not, I will turn it over to Amanda to cover the end of audit letter.
So as Pam mentioned, you should have in your packets our end of audit letter. I'm going to cover a few highlights here for you. Just to refresh the board's memory, you should have received a letter from us prior to our audit beginning, indicated how we had planned our audit to go. This letter will give you details on how our audit went, and you will note that we did not deviate from our plan. We did not identify any exceptions that required us to deviate from our plan. But there is a few things within this letter that I would like to highlight. So pages, well, actually, let me start off by something that's not in this letter. So part of our responsibility is to communicate if we identify any control deficiencies that would result in a significant deficiency or a material weakness. I'm pleased to say that you do not have that letter in your packet because we did not identify any controls that would elevate to the level of a significant deficiency or material weakness. So again, that goes to Pam's earlier point of how ready the township is for the audit. And that should make the board feel good as well, because you should feel confident in the information you're getting periodically from an accounting standpoint. So we did not come in and make a number of journal entries that would maybe lessen the reliance you should place on that data. So the board should feel good that the information you're getting won't require audit adjustments through our audit. Pages 2 through 4 of this letter, again, just provide you details on how our audit went. Good news is we had, like I mentioned, no deviations, so we really don't have much to talk about on those pages. I would like you to go ahead and go to page 5. Through our audit process, we did identify a few other recommendations that we just wanted to share with the board. The first of which being allocation of indirect costs. So as part of our audit, we review all of the department's activity, and we noted that indirect costs such as utilities, maybe building use, things like that, are not being allocated to all of the various departments of the township. Now, this is by no means required. Certainly the township would not be required to allocate these indirect costs, but it could be a good way for the township to fully understand and know what the costs of each department truly are. Now, again, this could very well be a cost-benefit analysis. Certainly that allocation is not something that is readily available, but still something for the township to consider nonetheless.
If I could ask a question, would that be a little bit more important for the enterprise departments, enterprise funds versus the general government departments?
So there is an allocation already taking place to some extent for the water, the business type activities. But this is really focusing on, I don't think there's any less importance, I should say. But again, it would just help you to capture the costs that each of those departments really are incurring, as opposed to maybe layering those in with general fund, for instance.
I do think for the funds that are self-supportive, like the water fund, building activity, those kind of things, it is a little bit more important because then you can really see the true cost. But in general fund, it is a little bit maybe less, I don't want to say important, but to your point, it's less impactful because the general fund's footing the bill per se to any fund that's not covering its own costs.
So
the difficulty behind that is the fact that if you're looking at utilities and those types of direct costs,
it's kind of one of
it
these.
becomes very subjective as to how you allocate these costs.
it's difficult. I mean, yes,
It
you can
is
say the
difficult.
building department takes X number of square feet, but
Sure.
somebody in there might like it hot. They crank it up. Somebody might like it cool. They crank it down. How many lights are left on? What hours a day?
Yeah.
To meter each department it's not a practical application.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about is, and Amanda's going to get into not into a lot of detail, but she's going to talk about some more new accounting standards that are coming into play this current year you're in and upcoming year. You all know about all the additional state laws that have been passed with reporting requirements. So we got into the conversation of you only have so many resources, right? And so what's the highest and best use of those resources? Time, meaning your people, right? So is it necessarily allocating indirect costs? Maybe not, but nonetheless, we wanted to at least, bring it up as a discussion point. But we know that management has definitely thought about the implications and definitely over the next couple of years with I'm sure as you've read through our recommendations, there is a lot coming down the pipeline from the state and from the Governmental Accounting Standards Board that sets the rules that your team has to follow from an accounting standpoint. So there is going to be additional constraints on the staff that you have, plus they're accounting for library and other things that they weren't doing in the past with new millages. Every special assessment you pass is something else they have to account for, things like that. So it's definitely a cost benefit in terms of time.
So would it also assist if we were challenged on the fees we charge for the different services, it could be allocated towards that? Okay.
Correct, yep.
The next other recommendation that we just wanted to bring to the board's attention really surrounds a few items that Pam alluded to a little bit earlier in relation to unique challenges and unique considerations for the township, considering that you are a growing community. And that is really surrounding financial planning and capital budgeting and capital planning. So this next paragraph is, I won't sit here and read it to you, but really thinking a little bit longer term. So Pam mentioned a budget really focuses on the next year. And, you know, with all the capital needs and improvements and goals that the township has, really formalizing that in first a capital plan, and then certainly utilizing that capital plan for, you know, your longer term forecasting, maybe to the township's benefit. You'd certainly be able to map out and react, you know, as things happen, knowing that you have that longer term financial plan. One other item that this paragraph covers, it really surrounds how the township is utilizing its improvement revolving fund. Currently, some of the capital expenditures are paid from that fund, others being paid for with general fund resources and being earmarked through general fund. So I think through this process of longer term planning, certainly revisiting how those two funds are working in conjunction with each other, just to utilize it from a budgeting perspective and certainly a planning perspective. The remaining pages 5 through 8 give you some more reading at your leisure. We certainly won't go through every item, but on page 8, I did want to point out a new accounting pronouncement that the township will be required to adopt as of December 31st, 2019. So for the year you're in now. And that really is surrounding fiduciary activities and what constitutes a fiduciary activity. GASB has been really nice. I'll say that in my sarcastic voice. The standard isn't as clear as maybe one would like it to be, so we're waiting on the implementation guide. So that's the guide that helps everybody understand what the standard says to be finalized. Certainly this will impact the township, primarily on fiduciary activities such as your MERS, your participation in MERS retiree health funding vehicle. We do know that that will be required to be reported as a fund within your financial statements as of December 31st, 2019. We think there's going to be some other fairly significant impacts. Again, as soon as that's issued, we're planning to, you know, certainly reach out to the township, get those things initiated, and start having those conversations. But that is one thing that will impact both the township and your financial statements this year that you're in now. So we've already started the ball rolling at our draft meeting, and certainly have been in discussions with Elaine and Dawn. So more to come on that, but again, we will keep you all posted.
She just means that 60-page financial statement's going to be 70-something next year.
Yeah. More fun to come. Are there any questions at all that we can take at this time? Again, we thank the township for certainly all of your assistance moving through the audit process. I know it's probably not always fun, but
Well, it's an arduous process.
yeah, we try to make it as fun as possible. But
You know, when you're here for 300 man hours, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Should you have any questions after tonight, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to walk you through any questions that you have.
Nice job, guys.
In summary, the public needs to know this, on a 1 to 10,
10 being.
how are we doing?
Oh. Is 10 good or is 1
That
good?
is good.
10, then I think we're on the 10 side.
That's what we need to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming out.
Okay. Moving on to item number 9, which is a variety of public hearings that we have here, resolutions. I think that we'll address some of the issues in the crowd. We have a public hearing to renew the established special assessment district for Burgess Bay Aquatic Weed Control and Lake Improvement. I'm gonna make a motion that we open public hearing at this time.
Mr. Supervisor, before we do, just to let the public know, last meeting, the board, we're not supposed to converse with you during public hearing. So we're not trying to be rude and not answer your questions, but I just want you to know that we have rules during public hearings, so we're not supposed to answer you back. Thank you.
Yes.
Do you need support for your motion?
I need support for
I
my
will
motion.
support it.
Okay, a motion and support, and we're gonna go to roll call vote.
Mr. Colwell?
Yes.
Mr. Ole votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
And Ray Boyce?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, at this time, if anyone has any comments regarding the assessment that we're talking about, which is the Burgess Bay Aquatic Weed Control and Lake Improvement, identify yourself and make your statement.
Yes, my name is Mary Garone. I live on 607 Burgess Drive.
Excuse me, do we have the roaming mic for
Yeah,
her?
where's the mic? I don't know where the mic went.
It's behind the,
Yeah, you might have to get to the podium. We did, and we bought a mic.
one behind,
Yeah.
You want me to go?
Yes.
Yeah, just go to the
Like
podium
mine,
if you don't
please.
mind. Sorry. What the problem is that we can hear you in here, but the audience can't hear you. Anyone watching on television.
Okay. State my name again, Mary Garone, 607 Burgess Drive, White Lake, Michigan. And my comment is, I've lived there many years. I am at the bay is here, I am the very corner right here. I have like 0 weeds where I'm at. And my issue is I feel that I should not be assessed in my taxes for an issue that I don't have. There again, I know maybe relocate where the base starts and where it doesn't. I'm right there on that corner. I'm on a retired income, and $500 a year is quite pricey for aquatic weed control. That's my comment.
Thank you. Anyone else public comment? Yes.
I don't think he turned down the box. I don't think the bass is on. Thank you.
Check 1, 2.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Thayer. I live at 603 Burgess Drive. I am next door neighbor of Mary Garone. I too have no issues with my lake frontage. I have 125 feet. It's all sandy. I'm not in need of that weed control. And as Mary stated, $500 is an exorbitant amount to add to taxes. I've been there 10 years, and in 10 years, my taxes have raised over $800 through the course of 10 years. That's okay, but I feel if we want to have that service provided, we could pay for it as a private citizen and not as an assessment on our taxes. Because to be honest, I really don't care for it. And it's only a 51% necessity to push this assessment through. Those are 20 homes. We're 2 out of 20, and we don't care for it. So I would ask that if the other homes in that Bay Area choose to have that service, that they pay for it on a private individual basis instead of assessing it on our taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sandy Brillinger. I also live on Burgess. I'm the neighbor of these two ladies here. I've been in charge of the Burgess Bay, and we have done this for over 20 years. And I go through the subdivision, the 20 houses that we do have, and I've gotten, other than the two ladies, we all need to have that weed control because there's just tons and tons of weeds. There's houses, like I think a house or two after theirs, they are at the end of it, but it's just for the whole bay. So we counted the 20 houses, and we have been doing this again for over 20 years. I've taken care of this for 20 years. So prior to that, I don't know. Alex used to do it, and I don't know how long he did it as well. But I did go, and we got the signatures for it. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Any other comment on that? You already had your opportunity. It's public comment. Yeah, public comment. All right, anyone else? Okay, at this moment in time, I would like to make a motion to close public comment.
Support.
Motion, support. All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment is now closed. Discussion by the board?
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes, sir.
Before we get too far into it, I just want to make sure that everyone knows on the first page of the resolution of 19019, which we're going to consider here shortly, there's an issue with the date. On the copy that you have, it says that the next public hearing is on the 18th, and the corrected copy that I have says 14th. So you need to correct that on your copies.
Oh.
Which is today's meeting date,
Oh,
not the 18th.
the 14th.
So,
Another typo. Okay, very good. Janine, do you have anything to add to this? How long has this been going on?
Well, since before I was doing this.
Okay, so
20 years.
over 20 years. So at that point in time, there were petitions filed, and the special assessment district was formed, and the owners of the properties at that time saw the need for that to carry on as a benefit for the bay in its entirety. There are areas, I'm sure, in the lake where there's more prevalency than others. But as anything else, when those areas are treated, it does make a difference. A lake expert. But that is how the special assessment district is set up. Okay, you are a member of it, and you are a party of it through this process. So, any other comment? Anything? Mr. Powell.
Mr. Supervisor, just a couple observations based upon what was shared tonight. A special assessment district is legislation that allows this township to spread the cost over people and to pay their, quote, fair share. Before this legislation was approved, people would go around and knock on doors and try to get neighbors to participate in what would obviously benefit them. And if they didn't want to, they didn't have to pay. So you ended up with half the people paying, half the people not paying, and the other people getting away without getting the benefit, but no cost. So that's the reason for an SAD. There might be somebody in the bay that takes care of their yard much better than anyone else, and they could come and say, you know, I don't need it because I take care of my own. But they're kind of part of the neighborhood there. That being one, and as Supervisor Kowal kind of alluded to, if there wasn't treatment in the entire bay, chances might be good, and I'm not a limnologist, but chances might be very good that you would then be identifying some weed growth. So you're kind of taking some advantage of the current leaving the bay, ending up in front of your home, so that you inadvertently are taking advantage of being part of the SAD. So it's very difficult to decide where that starts and stops, and I appreciate your position. I'm certainly prepared to vote yes on this, and I apologize. We will have another public hearing, I think, to set the roll, okay, in which we'll discuss the appropriate funds that are charged to every property owner, and you certainly have the right to speak at that public hearing as well.
As well, yeah. Mr. Roman?
For those of you that are in these special assessment districts and you're on fixed income, if you would, when you get a chance, if you can call me, I believe there is a program out there that can help fund your SAD for you. That said, I don't think we've done it yet, and there's a lot of rules to look into, but when I say fund it for you, that money would have to be repaid probably when the title changes, if you sell the home. It's more so a loan than it is. It's not free money, but it will help pay for your special assessment now. So again, if you can call me, I will look into that further for you.
Okay. We are cognizant of that, of the expense, but we do have to, we are following the process. Okay. Any other comments from Mr. Lowe?
I'll kind of agree with Mike's comments that he just made in regards to the fact this has been a long-going special assessment, and it really is hard to determine the benefits of what each particular owner was going to be, being that they've treated it over time. And certainly there are going to be some within the bay that probably, like these folks, are enjoying a really good, great beach, and others that are still struggling with the weeds. So I want to agree with what you said, and I'm willing to make a motion to approve Resolution 19019 to establish a special assessment district for the purposes of the Burgess Bay aquatic weed control and lake improvement for a 5-year assessment ending December 31st, 2023, and the next hearing will be held on our next Township Board meeting, June 18th, 2019.
I have a motion looking for support.
I'll support that.
I have support by Andrea Voorhees. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to item 9B. We're going to have a public hearing to confirm the assessment roll for the emergency sewer connection for the 2019 to 2001 Special Assessment District. We have a program that we have here in the township that the board set up that allows for emergency sewer connections in areas and to individuals if they qualify for distance to sewer and the amenities that are related to it. It is a service that we feel is in the best interest of the township as a whole, as it does put more individuals on the sewer, and we tend to see a lot of failures around either wet areas or around lakes, and that seems to be a goal that we have. So I'd like to make a motion to open public hearing.
Before we open the
Yes.
public hearing, I just want to make a correction.
Oh.
I believe on Resolution 19020 that in your board packet, you show the emergency sewer connections 2017-01. And that has been corrected to 2019-01.
Mine says 2019. Okay.
What did you change the number?
I don't know if it's down here, the date on it.
The title,
Oh, the title.
well, it's in a couple, it's in a couple spots. It's in the
Yeah.
title,
It's on the, also on the second page,
under paragraph
where it
1.
says the roll filed. On your resolution, you show 1701. It's in the first large paragraph.
Yep.
Should be 2019-01. I will make a motion to open public hearing.
Make a motion to open public hearing and look for support.
Support.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Lilly votes yes. Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Andrea Voice?
Yes.
Okay. We are now in public hearing to confirm the assessment role for the emergency sewer connections of the 2019 to 2001 Special Assessment District. If anyone has a comment, they can make it at this time. Yes, sir. Got the microphone?
Eric Wally, 819 Elkinford, right over here in Brendel Heights. This keeps coming up in our neighborhood, and apparently trying to establish a special assessment district for sewers in our neighborhood, which is all well and septic, all 160 homes. What's that?
No, well, that's generally it's on the subject matter that's at hand, but
Right, well, we all got a special assessment survey for a sewer just a few months ago.
right, but that's not pertaining to this particular.
Oh,
That-
which,
Yeah, love to have and hear what you have to say, but in the public hearing on this particular item, it's for subject matter that affects this particular assessment.
okay, is there one for Brendel Heights on the agenda, do you know?
No, there is not at this time.
Okay,
But if you would like to come in, talk to us about it, I'd like to have you come in and we can have some conversation.
absolutely. We keep turning it down.
You're welcome
Yeah.
to email the whole board
Okay.
as
If you'd
well.
like. Yeah.
Alrighty.
And also, when we do our public comment at the meeting, and I think you came in a little bit after the meeting started, typically, that's all right, typically in the beginning of the meeting, that would be a perfect time if you, because
Okay.
that's an item that's not on the agenda, and that you could discuss that and get that out.
Okay, understood.
We'd be happy to hear what you have to say, though. Okay. All right. Any other public comment? Any comment? That being none, I'll make a motion to close public comment.
Support?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Out of the public comment, public hearing. Okay. Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Supervisor, we just held a public hearing for special assessment. I know that probably not anybody here in the audience maybe specifically to do with this, but all of those previously have signed agreements that they wanted the special assessment and had agreed that they would be part of, agree to these hearings.
Correct. You gonna make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve Resolution 19020 to confirm a special assessment role for the Special Assessment District designated emergency sewer connections 2019-01.
As amended.
What's that?
As you amended it.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended.
I just wanted to make a quick comment, Mr. Supervisor, to the public. So this SAD is for homes whose private septic systems have already failed. And because they're within 200 feet of a sewer line, they're required to hook up. That's the difference between this and what you had brought up, sir.
Yeah, that's the difference. There's a sewer available, and in your case, we'll get into it.
And
Okay.
Support.
You have a support. Motion, support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to item 10, resolution number 19017, support of Russell Beach Homeowners Association to the Road Commission for Oakland County for a traffic island at Cascade Street. Is there anybody here from the association? I guess not. Okay, well, essentially, we have a road. I know that, is the chief in here? Yeah, Chief's here. We've had a request by the residents off of Cascade who are in the process of going through actions with the Road Commission of Oakland County to do a traffic island that would prevent traffic to go west on Cooley Lake Road just past the commercial district and limit cars coming into that area. It's been a chronic problem for many, many years. It's been a cut through. Chief's had cars over there. How many years have you had to go over there and kind of patrol that? Yeah, so it's been an endless cut through for people, and with the traffic congestion that we have in the corridor of the Union Lake, Cooley Lake area, it's only increased. So these residents have gone to the Road Commission, have petitioned the Road Commission, have petitioned White Lake Township as well as Commerce Township, because this is a rather peculiar part of the township. where part of your garage can be in Commerce and the other part of your garage can be in White Lake. So it's a really weird little area. So the actual improvement is in Commerce Township, but it does affect potentially some White Lake Township homeowners who have gone by petition to do this. And this requirement is to get a resolution from the Township Board that we do not have a problem with that happening and that we would support this traffic island. I have had conversations with the fire department, the fire marshal, John Holland, and with the chief, and both fire and police are in support of this particular traffic controlling device in that area. So, any questions from the board? Yes, sir.
I'll just make a comment. I've been out to that street on many evenings. I know many of the residents, and I'm glad to see that this is finally on the agenda.
Yeah, so am I. Yeah, good thing.
I have a question.
Powell.
Yes, you represented that the fire department and police department are in favor versus not committal or not opposed to. There's a difference there. So I wonder if the chief.
Well, the police department is in favor of doing it, but chief, you can state your case.
The traffic control device that they want to put in is not in White Lake, it's in Commerce. What it affects is the residents that are part of that association that are in White Lake. They have expressed many times that we've been down there that the cut-through traffic that goes from Cooley and cuts through to get to the other Cooley, it's a problem. And I see it, and the officers see it, and the residents see it as an issue. This will prevent cut-through traffic when they can legitimately go around and use Cooley, Union, Cooley, instead of using a residence to cut through. I'm in favor of it because it will reduce people at the four-way stops, the three-way stops that they have in there, and it reduces the potential for a catastrophic event such as a pedestrian PI in that area. So I'm in favor of it because it'll reduce the potential for something bad happening there in that subdivision.
If I could ask you, Chief,
Sure.
It will in fact, however, add to the turning movements on Cooley Lake Road, however, because those residents back in there now have to use both intersections to enter their sub instead of going straight through. So you're in favor because they're not hitting the three-way stops in the subdivision, but you're adding to the traffic movements on the main roadways.
Correct. That is correct. So I'm more worried about the residents within that subdivision because traffic wasn't initially supposed to be that high in that area. That's why I'm in favor of it. And yes, you are correct. It's going to increase traffic and time at the traffic lights and turning left and turning right and all of those motions. But I'm in favor of protecting the citizens that live in that subdivision, which it will do.
Thank you, Chief.
I personally am typically not in favor of restricting traffic within the township. This is an extremely unique circumstance in that it is a cut through from one main road to another main road that if I lived there certainly would be problematic to me as well. I like the fact that they're not closing the road down or putting a gate in, and so there's a benefit there to allow people to exit the subdivision but not just enter that part of the subdivision. I was curious as to why why it's proposed as a concrete island. We're narrowing the road down to a one-way road. Why it's proposed to be a concrete island instead of just a narrowed landscape island instead?
Can't answer that. No knowledge of it. That's on their planning end with the road commission.
All right, and then how is traffic going to be controlled? Somebody is going to drive down that road and say, oh boy, the road narrows here, but I only have to go 25, 50 feet and I can get through there. You're certainly not going to have the tire, what's it called, the tire restrictors. So is it going to be an enforcement issue now on stopping traffic from going the wrong way in a one-way street?
This is strictly the road commission's decision. They only want our input as to whether we're opposed to it or not. I am not opposed to it for the reasons that the chief stated, and I believe it's in the best interest. There's a lot of small kids that live in that area, and people do come through there. I have sat there on more than one occasion, even prior to this meeting, and when it started last year, they were talking about it. And I was amazed how a number of people that don't know what that red sign is that has sides on it. It says stop. They have no clue what that means. So I don't know, maybe you need to put it up there and some other, I don't know. So that in itself is a problem. But I know running a stop sign is not a good thing, and that's not a great ticket. But I'll tell you, going a wrong way on a one-way is a real nasty ticket.
Yep.
Okay, and if a couple people get them, so be it. Yeah. If we have emergency vehicles, I've been assured from the county that there'll be no impediment for us to get a fire truck through there or a police vehicle through there at all. So in their design, and they have. They do their design standards as you have your illustrious relationship with the county. Michael, you should know that answer.
I know.
So,
I noticed there's dead end signs and a road end signs too. If people can't read either, then shame on them.
One way and blah, 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 blah. So, yes.
Jean-Philippe Leuve, 247 Rosario Lane. Jean-Philippe Leuve, 247 Rosario Lane. I wonder about the pedestrian, because when it's two cars can cross each other, a pedestrian can safely walk and a car can drive. But once you put the concrete block, I'm just wondering how would someone with a stroller or in a wheelchair would use that left side or north side of the road?
I can't answer that question. That's a road commission question.
Yeah. They might need some ramping or something to still make it
That's
accessible.
yet to be determined. And again, this is construction on the commerce side, so that doesn't entail us. They just have, because of the unique characteristic of that neighborhood, they have to have our approval to even go forward with this. And I felt, again, myself that, and the chief and a number of people, that it's worthy to go that way. So, but I can't answer those questions. No. Okay, any other? Okay, yes, Mr. Lilly.
Put a resolution on the floor.
Put it on the floor.
Motion to approve resolution 19017 in support of the Russell Beach Homeowners Association, determine it is in the best interest of the public to construct a traffic island on Cascade Street as proposed by the Road Commission of Oakland County at no cost to other township residents from any funds managed by West Lake Township.
I have a motion, looking for support.
Support.
I have support on the motion. Mr. Powell?
Under discussion, I'm hoping that the comments from the resident that spoke is taken into account. As long as it's concrete, there ought to be a ramp on each end so that the bicyclers and the pedestrians can walk up and back down again, instead of, so that everyone knows this lane is proposed at only 11 feet wide. If this were being approached to the road commission, their minimum width is a 16-foot one-way drive. So they're breaking their own design requirements and making the lane only 11 feet wide, which would not leave any room at all for a pedestrian or a bicyclist in this area. So I appreciate your position there, and I would like the township to present that concept to the road commission.
Very good. It will be conveyed. Okay, we have motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. New business. Item 11A, first reading of the amendment to the Chapter 18, Article 3 of the Code of Ordinances for Fireworks. As some of you may or may not know, the fireworks laws in the state of Michigan have changed again. And Lisa.
You want me to deal with that?
Yeah.
As you might recall,
I
when
think you missed one, Rick. I think we had the trust fund.
Nope, that was removed. That was
10B
resolution.
was removed.
Removed, 10B was.
10B?
10B was removed, yeah.
the previous law prohibited the township from regulating consumer fireworks discharge on all national holidays, the day before a national holiday and the day after a national holiday. And so your fireworks ordinance kind of mirrored that and said, okay, well then those are the only days you're allowed to discharge fireworks. And it was consistent with all other jurisdictions. Everyone kind of did the same thing. Well, now the law has been amended really because a lot of times the 4th of July falls on a Monday and people have parties on the weekend, and they were not then allowed to discharge on the Saturday of the 4th of July weekend. So what they did was we took out the reference to national holiday in our ordinance, and we specifically listed all the dates that the new law says we can't regulate the discharge of consumer fireworks, and that meant that the township was then prohibiting the discharge of consumer fireworks on all other days. So we've listed in here, and if you want me to read it for the benefit of the public, I'm happy to. 11 a.m. on December 31st through 1 a.m. on January 1st, 11 a.m. to 11:45 on the Saturday immediately preceding Memorial Day, 11 a.m. to 11:45 on the Sunday immediately preceding Memorial Day, 11 a.m. to 11:45 p.m. on each day beginning on June 29th and ending on July 4th, 11 a.m. to 11:45 p.m. on July 5th, if that date is a Friday or Saturday, 11 a.m. to 11:45 p.m. on the Saturday immediately preceding Labor Day, 11 a.m. to 11:45 p.m. on the Sunday immediately preceding Labor Day. So those will be the only days that consumer fireworks will be allowed to be discharged in White Lake if this new ordinance is adopted, and that's consistent with the new state law.
Correct.
This ordinance also amends the penalty, which is required by state law, and it increases the penalty to $500 for a first offense for a minor violation and $1,000 for a first offense for a serious violation. And they define in the statute what serious violation is, and we really mirror that as well in this amendment.
So they're actually coming down on them.
So
Yes.
what's the definition, what's the state definition of fireworks?
Oh, geez.
Well, there's a lot of different categories.
If a kid blows off a little lady finger, is that a fireworks outside of this time frame? And you're gonna charge a kid $500 because he blew off a firecracker?
So I can look up
State
the
law.
definition of consumer.
I just asked, is
Yeah,
it the aerial, is it the aerial fireworks, or is it anything that's associated with the 4th of July
Or
fireworks?
that makes a report.
Or makes a report?
They have different definitions for different categories. I can't tell you what consumer
Okay.
fireworks is defined. I can look it up and tell you if you'd like or not.
It's not necessary. I'm sure the police department would think twice about ticketing a
Get after those
16-year-old.
five-year-olds.
Get after the 5-year-olds for.
Ticket 6-year-olds and above.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We're safe. All right. 5-year-olds are safe. Thanks, Chief, for clarifying that.
And that hasn't, just so that it's clear, that hasn't changed from the.
It was a curious question.
Yeah, sorry. John asked me if he should be here for this. I said, no.
No.
No problem.
No. Well, we really don't have a lot of choice. We have to.
No.
follow state
I
law.
will
Say, Mr. Powell, that it's always a last resort that we ever issue anybody a violation on this.
I appreciate that, Chief.
We try to reason with people. But if you have somebody that's being, as it is, what this is a perfect example of when the law changed and you had people doing things 24/7. They didn't care what they were doing, no consideration given for their neighbors or their dogs or anybody, and outside of whatever the limits. I tell you myself, I've been up north in a couple places, perfect, quiet, camping somewhere, 2 o'clock in the morning, shoot something off and it rises me 2 feet out of my tent because it's one of those reporting shells. I love stuff that goes bang, in the sky and boom and everywhere else, but there's a certain, unfortunately, this is one of those common sense rules that the states come back because of the number of complaints.
Totally understand.
It is what it is. Mr. Rome.
Mr. Supervisor, if the board does pass this, I just want to make sure that we publicize this really well, these new days and times.
Yes, we will
I don't
have
know
this.
if the police department can put it on their Facebook page.
They'll have it. They'll post it. I'm sure we'll
I know
post it on
we
ours, and we'll
will.
get it on our webpage, and we'll make it very well known.
Thank you,
And,
Mr. Supervisor.
And we will even put follow fireworks safety, and we'll put that out on our marquee out front, because that season is going to be upon us shortly.
Yep.
And the
Yeah.
increase in the fines.
And an increase in the fine. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Looking to, yes, Lisa?
It's first reading.
It's first reading. Move on to second reading. Looking for a motion? Mr. Roman?
Motion to move on to second reading, the ordinance to amend Chapter 18, Article 3, fireworks of the White Lake Township Code of Ordinances.
I have motioned to move to second reading. I have support by Mr. Powell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Next is item 11B, purchase agreement with DLZ, who is, for the sake of the public, I'm sure those watching and those that have been here have heard our engineering term Johnson and Anderson many, many times over the years. There's been a merger of Johnson and Anderson and DLZ. We now are fortunate that we have a much larger group of engineering talent pool. I guess it's like 700 employees or something like that. So it's a rather large group that is melded with Johnson and Anderson, which gives us a broader spectrum of engineering capabilities. So it was a plus, but you will see more of the DLZ notations on things to come. And this is for rebuilding SCADA, which is part of our automated controls and reporting systems in our water system that we're going through the township, location by location, to try to do improvements to make the water system more efficient and try to stay on top of that. Mr. Potter, what would you like to add?
Yes, DPS is requesting approval of the attached proposal by DLZ, formerly JNA, for design, installation, and programming of a new SCADA control panel to be installed at Hillview Well House. I'm not going to read this whole memo, but so Hillview Well House was not included in SCADA Phase 2, which we completed in December. As the at that time we were working on permit drawings for a future project at Hillview. That permit is being held up at the state level right now, and we're going back and forth through the review process. In the meantime, the last remnant of our old SCADA program and control panel is dying daily, and it's starting to cost us a lot of money in overtime. We would like to go ahead with the Hillview panel now. We'll then pull that out of whatever Hillview proposal we come up with for rehab of that well house as owner provided. So what we plan to do is build the panel for the new plant and then temporarily program it to work with what's there now. We'll temporarily wire it. It's going to be very minimal. We've already installed the radio tower and the radio. So part of this proposal would be to tie that into the new system as well. So once that's completed, then we can take the old SCADA system down and get rid of it, and we'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, that's like
1999.
Yeah, it's an older system. And it's, who's the manufacturer of that one? That's a
It's a Motorola MOSCAD
yeah.
system.
Yeah, that's an oldie.
And it uses a telephone dialer, believe it or
Yeah.
not. So it's, if you get a lot of alarms, you get a phone call, and then you have to log in and a password to hear what the alarms are. And then,
We went to the moon on less than that, so.
yeah, well.
Quit complaining, yeah.
Yep. Hopefully those fellas were pretty well paid, because my guys are going out on 2 or 3 call-outs a night, and we can't have that.
It's some of the remnant of our system. Yes, Mr. Roman.
Aaron, are you proposing this come out of water operating or water capital?
Well, anything over $5,000 is capitalized.
Okay, so water
But that doesn't mean that we won't pay for that out of operating.
Oh, that was my question. Do you have a choice, or is that something you want to kick around? Or
Well, Elaine is going to capitalize it one way or another, and then we intended the Hillview project to be fund balance, paid with fund balance.
operating?
Operating.
Operating. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor, and maybe Aaron can help me with this. This proposal jumps us into a little bit different position than we've been in the past, unless I'm missing this. Our consulting engineer was just that, J&A in the past, and they then designed and put out to bids for the installation of the hardware and the specific improvements. It appears, based upon this, that DLZ is now offering a, quote, design-build type contract, and we're actually purchasing hardware as well as the installations directly from our consulting engineer. Could you help me understand that relationship?
Yeah, so you're exactly right, but I would like to point out that this is not new with this proposal. In February of 2018, this board approved this same configuration for all the other SCADA sites. And that was a $190,000 project that was completed in December. It is a design build. They also, you also approved at that board meeting, I think it was 2018, for some custom software that was designed and programmed by J&A. So they do a lot of that type of work. They did that. I mean, it's not, we're not the only community that they do that type of work for. It's one of the things that they offer as a service. So, you know, we chose Opto 22. This is an Opto 22 system because I had a lot of experience with an Opto 22 system in Waterford that was also designed by Johnson & Anderson. And with over 15 years of operating experience working with that system, I was very comfortable with it. And with SCADA Phase 2, which was approved in 2018, you know, we were able to complete all of the remaining sites. The first site that we brought Opto 22 in with was part of the package for Village Acres, and I was not involved in that. That bidding process and bid specification process. So, you know, really, you've made that decision to go down that road before I came here. We like the product. We like the support that we get from Johnson & Anderson. It's very competitively priced, in my opinion. I know Waterford Township right now is looking at replacing their SCADA system with a competing system called VT SCADA, and they, depending on who you ask, aren't having a very good time with it.
And I agree, and I'm not going to argue with the concept or the product at all, nor the capabilities of DLZ to provide for the services. In my opinion now, I believe that it puts us in a little bit different position, because it'd be like we have an architect aboard that we've hired, and oh, by the way, he builds buildings. So why not go to him to build the building instead of go out for 3 different quotes for the hardware? And so I'm thinking that this board, I think, is going to have some discussions to take on to decide how to enter into the appropriate contract without having a design build on every single thing that goes on in the township. So let me just go. So J&A or DLZ decides we install water main too. So why not have them install all the water main?
Well, they don't
However,
necessarily do that.
they're not. We're not talking
Okay,
about
guys,
that, though.
we're talking philosophically here. We're getting a service and a hardware and an asset from one vendor, and have no concept whether or not another vendor could beat that price. So we're countering our own procurement process, and I'm just saying that's something that we're going to have to discuss.
Well, that's not quite true. Our engineering, as professional services, falls under a different type of category.
And I'm right with you, but engineering is different than the installation. Say they go into well drilling. That's not an engineering issue. So I'm just saying we're going to have to discuss that and decide whether or not we agree with that being a professional procurement.
I believe Aaron had mentioned, you had mentioned that you thought this was a very competitive price.
Well,
somehow, some way, you've got an idea as to what
We do. This is not something that they just gave me a letter in the mail and I, looked at it and said, yeah, I like that. Like I said, this is the last piece of the puzzle that we've been building here for 3 years. So Opto 22 does control their pricing. Now, there are several other places that I can go to get programming done. There are several other places that I can go to get hardware and components, including Lotus Electric. You can buy this stuff directly from Opto 22. You could have another electrician build the panel. Whether I get a proposal from Lotus Electric for me, or if I have Johnson and Anderson get the proposal for Lotus Electric, to me, it doesn't really matter. I understand where you're coming from, but like I said, the township has gone down this road back when you guys approved the contract for Village Acres. That was before I came on board. Now, again, I agree with the decision to use Opto 22. I'm very familiar with the product. I've a lot of experience with the product, and so far, I get more call-outs from this one remaining site than I do the rest of our new system put together combined. So, I guess I don't really understand the question on why we are raising the question now in the 11th hour when we're trying to complete what we've already been working on.
So that you know, I'm not challenging the decision, and I think my vote's going to be affirmative on this. So it's not challenging the decision tonight. It's the first time that I actually identified the fact that our engineers have gone outside of engineering and providing a service that is different than engineering. So that being said, I'm right with you. We need to follow it. So it's like instead of putting Chevy parts into a Chrysler, we're going to stick with the Chevy. So I'm good with that. But going forward, now if they come in and say, you know what, we now have this, we're now providing this service, just because they're professional services doesn't mean that we then will accept their prices on additional services. So I'm just suggesting.
I understand.
It'd be nice if you were to come back and say, you know what, I checked them out. These other two prices are $10,000 more than them, and therefore we're still going to go with them. So I'm good.
I'd love some direction on what we consider as engineering
That's what I'm saying,
services
we need
and
to
what we
discuss.
consider our treatment plant controls. I mean, if we hire an engineer to design a plant, part of the plant design is control. So
There is some rollover, Mike, in this.
and it has been
And I'm
on
with
plants that we've just completed.
Yeah, and I'm with you.
And so, I mean, I don't
We
know.
need to discuss it. So, thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Yeah. Most of that is from Lotus Electric anyways, Mike. You can really look at the expenditure of that. Over 50% of the cost of it is sourced out.
Yeah, it's certainly the software and the hardware, but now they're.
It's not like in this case, but you'd be careful to the public because it presents as though sometimes people might think that they're maybe taking advantage of us from a price standpoint, and they're not if you look at the actual numbers.
Yeah, we're dealing with a different engineering company than we had before.
It's
And
still the
so
same
let's-
engineering
let's-
grouve, they just offer different services.
They don't
And
offer,
I've-
these are
and
the
I've
same
been there.
services that
Correct,
they've offered
I know,
for
but I'm talking in
decades.
general.
Yeah, okay.
If
Thank
I
you.
may, Mr. Powell, maybe you're trying to express you'd just like to set a new standard moving forward?
At least evaluate what options we have. That's all. Yeah.
Mr. Roman.
I'd like to make a motion, if I could. Spend out of water operating not to exceed $21,700 on the Hillview Wellhouse SCADA panel replacement.
I have a motion, looking for support.
I'll support that if you include authorization for the supervisor to sign.
I'll amend my motion to authorize the supervisor to
Sign
sign
the agreement,
I support
thank
the
you.
agreement.
Thank you. Okay, I have a motion, I have support, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Ayes have it. Point well taken, Mike.
Thank you.
Item 11C, first reading of Kimmel rezoning. Mr. O'Neill.
Hi there. I have a pretty easy one for you here on this one tonight. They're not always this easy. So at some point, roughly 20 years ago, I feel old, but I still was not here then. But for whatever reason, at some point, there was a map amendment that affected the properties that are involved in this rezoning request. There are 3 properties that are currently used in residential fashion and, well, let me go back up to the top of my memo. They are on Elizabeth Lake Road and Avonlea. Parcel numbers 12, 26, 107, 019, 020, and 021. There was a public hearing at the Planning Commission on May 2nd, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the rezoning request, which is to take these properties that are currently being used in residential fashion, but just so happen to be zoned general business, and rezone them to R1D, single family residential, which is consistent with virtually every property in the neighborhood, with the exception of, well, you see it here, Lakeview Supermarket. So it's this corner property here, the property immediately west of it, and the property immediately south of it. There's roughly 0.7 acres of property involved in this. So, and I didn't know that we had an ATM in the cemetery, but if anyone's looking, I don't know what the fee is over there.
That's
But
called
apparently, I checked it out. I didn't see it. I don't know if it's hidden somewhere, but according to this, we do offer that.
That's what must be picked.
Yeah, it's not on our website, but apparently we offer the service in the cemetery over there. So, yeah, the only non-residential property or non-residential use in the immediate area, would be the cemetery and in the market right next door. So this makes a great deal of sense to rezone this. It actually came up when a homeowner was looking at some refinancing options and said, hey, they'd let me buy this house, but they won't let me refinance it several years later because it's zoned general business. And sure enough, he's correct. And we don't know exactly when it happened or why it happened, but these properties were rezoned perhaps at some point 20 years ago with an eye toward doing something non-residential similar to the supermarket. But in this case, obviously, when someone is in a situation like this, we don't generally object, and it's consistent with the master plan, so we don't generally object to this kind of request. There, I don't believe, was a single person who showed up who had much to say other than the applicants, because this is pretty straightforward. Actually, most people were saying they're going to rezone those to commercial, and I said, no, actually, they are commercial. They're going to rezone those houses to residential. So, in summary, the finding after reviewing the request was that it was appropriate to make this map amendment from general business to R1D because the requested R1D zoning district is consistent with the master plan and future land use map. Rezoning the parcels to R1D is compatible with the character of the surrounding area. Rezoning the parcels to R1D will not result in a spot zoning, and the requested rezoning is consistent with the historical use of the property. So those are the reasons why the Planning Commission recommended approval. This is first reading. As you all know, there will be a second reading if you move this along tonight, which would be held a month from now. But again, I think I said to the Planning Commission, they don't get any more straightforward and easy than.
It's really odd that's an oddity.
It is, and it was unfortunate that they had to go through this process. We treated it as one request to try to make it as efficient as possible and kind of group them together, but they still are kind of dragging along through this process. So, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I think you answered all my questions. Mr. Lilly.
Rick, I was on my way home when I spotted those rezoning signs, and I absolutely could not believe that we were going to put commercial zoning there. And I was so happy to come in the next morning to find out that we were going the opposite way. So I absolutely will support this rezoning request.
You want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to move to second reading the rezoning from general business to RD1 single family on the following parcels: 12-26-107-019, 12-26-107-020, and 12-26-107-021.
You meant R1D, right?
Yeah.
R1D, yes.
R1D. What did I say?
RD1.
R1D. Excuse me. Thanks for the correction.
You had all the letters and numbers.
R1D.
I'll support the motion.
Motion and support by Mr. Lilly. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you.
Okay, so that will be back in similar fashion.
Yes.
Next month.
Next month. Next up, we have the approved plan development agreement for Preserve at Hidden Lake.
Okay, there's really not a whole lot to show. The development agreement was at your spot today. I apologize, it for some reason wasn't in the electronic packet, but Really, it's unremarkable in that there are very few comments at this point. It was pretty well done. I think after 2 reviews, they had just a couple of real basic comments. I think Lisa had one that involved some title work, which, you know, we don't like old title work, so the applicant is aware of that and is agreeable to updating that. There are some minor modifications to the exhibit drawings, which are, as you know, and at the back of this package, effectively the set of site plans that are approved and are recorded as an exhibit to this development agreement. So the Planning Commission, at their meeting on May 2nd, approved the final site plan and recommended the development agreement to you for approval. And, you know, the only conditions I would add would be any review comments, as well as there was an additional condition. As you know, the project has a small lake in the center of it, and there is quite a bit of wetlands surrounding the lake, and the planning commissioners would like to see some protections put in place. So they'd like a reference added to the development agreement, and then also language placed into the master deed that protects the wetlands from being altered. This developer actually did another project where there was some open space preserved, and we had them put in kind of delineation markers, maybe every few property lines around the preserved area, so that residents who came in, and, you know, I won't pick on residents in specific, but they all like to grow their backyard. So if there's woods there and they're not theirs, they can't wait to put a fire pit there, or their grass clippings, or, you know, walk their dog back there after it eats. But, you know, that's all stuff that we don't want to have happen, so we're going to cite some specific protections. So it's a long way of saying we want some just boilerplate, simple language added to the development agreement. And then when we look administratively at the master deed and bylaws, we'll make sure that proper protections, similar to what we've done in other instances, are in place. So there is no question for the new residents as to what is allowed and what is not. So other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, I know that you spent some time on this, and I know the board, the planning commission has spent some time on it. There's been a lot of concerns. Obviously, it's a fairly large project. The questions of the phasing, things of that nature. I think there was some conversation that was had today that we were talking about, you know, just to be very cognizant of the setbacks away from Union Lake Road. I firmly believe that it's just a matter of time, in a not too terribly distant future, they're going to see some improvements to that corridor. And it would be, I wouldn't want to live on something that I was X feet from and now I'm X feet closer. So I would take that into consideration. I understand that this is these are preliminary envelopes, but I would say I'd be extremely cognizant of that to get these houses, give as much space between Union Lake Road that you can.
What, if I could add, the site plan's deceiving because it's at a 1 inch equals 100
Right.
scale, and that's not normal.
I don't know what
And
that's, I can't
so
read this.
in looking at it, yeah, Mr. Lilly and I actually looked at it today, and I believe that there are 2 or 3 houses or homes that are roughly, I'm going to say 90-ish or 100 feet from the shoulder of the road, the travel portion of the road, so call it 90 feet. The sidewalk that they're going to put in the right-of-way is at about the midpoint. So they're about 40 feet from the sidewalk, and then there's probably another 40 feet from the sidewalk in some instances, and their engineer's sitting behind me. I don't know if you can confirm that, but I'm ballparking it to be about 90 feet. So the sidewalk, there is quite a bit of room in the right-of-way to have, a lane added and let the road grow in that direction without even being really close to the sidewalk, in my estimation.
That was just a concern that I had. Mr. Lilly had the same concern.
Right, and some of this landscape screening will be important for those houses. No one will want to buy them if they're not screened properly, and that's something that through the site plan process we've looked at, as well as some of the screening from adjacent developments, or I should say neighborhoods, and that's something that it'll kind of be a work in progress to make sure some of that screening is taken care of.
You're
as well.
satisfied with all of the...
Yeah, the site plan piece deals mostly with that, and the action that they took will, I think, have buttoned up all but a couple of issues, with the exception of some screening. There's some fencing and landscaping prescribed down the west side and the south side of this development. That's a part of the site plan portion, and until the limits of clearing have been exactly established. We don't know what'll be out there remaining that will do much in the way of screening. So they've agreed to work with staff to supplement what's remaining. And there's not going to be a ton still remaining, and plant and install fencing sufficient to satisfy.
You can handle all those things administratively, internally?
Yes, and they know that if they argue with me on it, I'm going to take them back to the planning commission. The planning commission is going to make them do it anyway.
Okay.
So,
All right. Thank you.
yep.
Any other comments from the board? Mr. Lilly?
Oh, yes, I have a couple if I might. So, I'm in full.
You're not Mr. Lilly.
I apologize. If you want to call on him, I'd be more than happy.
That's right. He conceded. Mr.
All right. I'm certainly in favor of adding the protection of the wetlands, without a doubt. I also want this board to remember that this is a development agreement. So this really holds the developer responsible to do certain things, and quite frankly, they're a first-class development, and so we expect that they're going to be, that they're not going to need any of the language in here anyway. But we have most recently experienced a great deal of frustration and concern from residents after the developer leaves of items that they had no idea that they needed to, that they were responsible for until the township identified problems within their development. Two major items are the stormwater system and, quite frankly, the private roads within here. So let's stick with the stormwater system first. In the master deed and bylaws, it would be extremely helpful, and I have not read those obviously, it would be very helpful if there was a specific section that says so much money out of all the fees, all the maintenance fees, were to go into a sinking fund, so that in 10, 15 years, the money was there to actually maintain the system, so that we don't have to go through what we went through on Settlers Point and deal with this traumatic experience about retired people having to come up with money in order to maintain their system. So it should be maintained periodically anyway. Homeowners associations are notorious for not doing anything until their house or street floods or main roadway floods. And so I'm going to suggest that we ask that there be something put in there, and the developer maybe can discuss this with us tonight. But then also I'm very adamant about the road system as well. Roads in this area typically have somewhere between a 10 and 20 year life expectancy. Private roads are totally under the responsibility of the homeowners association, and most public don't realize the fact that even public roads within their subdivision, the road commission says we don't have the money to maintain them or to fix them or to replace them, so therefore it's on the people in that sub anyway. So I'm suggesting that we require, at least discuss on this board level, the requirement to put in the master deed and bylaws some means of a fund that is kept in perpetuity until those improvements need to be done. There are a number of ways that it can be done, and I'm just going to throw them out because I'm not sure that the developer has ever thought of this. At the time of the implementation of the master deed and bylaws and the finalizing, the recording of those, or at a particular time, the developer should be responsible to put some money in, some seed money into the sinking fund that can grow over the next 10, 15 years. Then a suggestion that on each closing of every unit within that development, that there be another certain amount be put into that sinking fund, and then a certain percentage of all the maintenance fees, the annual maintenance fees, be put into that fund, and it can be easily calculated by somebody as brilliant as our treasurer here.
Thank you.
That in 15 years, there's enough money in each one of those sinking funds to be able to replace those improvements or those assets. If we don't do something like that, those people in 15 years are going to be back before this board wondering where the heck they're gonna get their money to replace their roads and fix their storm sewer system. When, if we're smart now, they'll have the money there earmarked for it, and there won't be any issues. Just a suggestion for discussion here amongst the board.
No, it's a great idea. I mean, this is a problem that we have with a variety of developments over the years. There's a history of it.
Right.
We have neighborhoods around here that don't have the roads. I'm not sure of when the timing is going to be perfect to do that, and and how we would implement all this, and if we have to make that amendment eventually in our planning by ordinance. I'm not sure how you have to implement that.
Well, I mean, I know you always want my 2 cents, Mike.
Absolutely.
I just think logistically, how do you monitor that? And if it's really something that's the association's gonna be responsible for, if they're not already doing it, which they're required to under their ordinance, then how do you have any enforceability if they're not doing this new provision that you're gonna add into their master deed and bylaws? The reality is, they're required to do it. And what we've done as a township board in the past is, well, we've filed suit against some for not doing what they're required to do, and we get the result, although you have to pay your lawyer the legal fees to take it that far.
And we have to sue our residents, which what a terrible thing to have to do.
Well, we sued the association. Right,
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Be careful there.
Which was supposed to be responsible for the repairs. But we've also, you also could have created an SAD for that development, for other developments. The board decides which way to go as far as enforcement. My only point is, just because you haven't put it in there doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
Well,
yeah, it's a little hard to, and it's gonna be extremely difficult logistically. I mean, that the township is not necessarily in a position to go back and monitor each homeowners association financial statement. You know, we could sit there and say, okay, they're gonna take X dollars a year out per household towards the road and X dollar towards the storm maintenance, and supposedly in their dues or their fees that they pay at the association level will go into this fund. How do we know that in year 6 or year 7, they say, well, we've got money in this fund, and you know what? We got to put a new play structure in down there. Man, we got $100 grand over here. Let's go put the play structure in. And they take that money and they go do that with it.
Okay, guys.
We don't police that. That's
remember, every ordinance that we write, you can say, but this doesn't cover everything. But we write it because we want to be proactive against something that's going to happen.
I'm not disagreeing.
So if we don't do it now, it will never be put in the master deed and bylaws, because we have control over that now. We have one owner, and if we wait until there's 100 people in here, how are you ever going to suggest that? So I'm just suggesting that now, and then if they don't follow their own requirements in the master deed and bylaws, then any homeowner in there then can challenge the homeowners association. We aren't responsible to do that. We are, however, responsible to make it happen when the system no longer functions. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to say, well, in your bylaws, it says this, we set it up to have this done. Don't argue with us if you didn't follow that. We're here to help you, but at least we thought ahead of time.
I think it would be easy to add language that directs them to do it and explains to them why, so they have that in black and white. And if it's in their master deed and bylaws, they're furnished a copy upon closing, unlike the development agreement, which they would not be. That's why
it's just another line item that the homeowners association will just have to take care of.
Right, and I mean, a responsible association will make, I mean, ultimately, I agree with both. I agree that there should be some language in it, but I think logistically it's going to be difficult. I just, but I mean, if you're going to make Mike do it, not me, then I guess I'm okay.
It doesn't matter.
Well,
I
I'll
just don't
speak
know.
up then. I mean, recently I've taken on the treasurer duties for many of the lake boards. And I guess my thought on this is it is a private subdivision. I don't have a problem putting that language in the bylaws that state the needs for these monies for, X, Y, and Z purposes. But as far as me monitoring that money?
Oh, Lord, no.
Yeah, no. Then I take on liability. What if something breaks and there's a shortage? Well, guess who's going to get sued?
It's too long.
No, my only reason for mentioning that is because in not unlike an actuarial discussion, the engineer can come up with the estimated replacement or maintenance cost 10, 15 yards down the line. You then backload the sinking fund, anticipate the interest accrued during that time, and in 15 years, you have a fund there to actually handle something that needs to be taken care of.
I understand the thought process, I guess, at this point, though, Mr. O'Neill will have to have some conversation and see where.
But if we pass this tonight, we have no other authority.
You have to still approve the master deed and bylaws.
Well, we do that administratively, so if they want us to do something, then we should hear that tonight.
So that's why I'm picking it out tonight, because if we don't do it tonight, we've lost our control and any input at all to the developer.
Can we hear from the developer, Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
Craig Pisecki, Preserve Hidden Lake. We do
Should probably have the mic.
I was going to say, Craig Pisecki, Preserve at Hidden Lake. We do have provisions in the master deed that do break down a budget. So basically what we do when we give them the master deed, breaks down all the line items like the road, the maintenance and things like that, whatever may, for plowing, snow removal, things of that nature.
Right.
As far as like storm structures go, I mean, we could figure out what the cost would be to clean those out, and maybe put a line item in there. But we do have a budget, and basically it's replacement costs we figure that out for 20 years for the road. We put that dollar amount in there and then back it out in number of owners, and that's what the dollar amount is. So we do have provisions as far as numbers go, but I mean, like you said, as far as the money goes, if they have a big pile of money, we have no control how they spend it. But we can just prepare them for it. So we have no issue with putting anything in there regarding that.
Well, that may be something you could work administratively with. I don't want to hold this process up.
Mhm.
Okay, but I think if you could work administratively with Sean on that,
Mhm.
Just as a protection for the residents themselves.
Right, yeah, that's what we
Also,
do.
We've seen some reaction from individuals that they have one detention basin that 20 years later looks great. You go to the one down the hill.
Mhm.
It's almost unidentifiable.
Right.
And it says in their bylaws they're supposed to take care of it, and then we have to help out, which is not a problem, and we'll get through it. But I just think for the quality of the product and what you're doing, I think people should know up front, hey, look, this we're saving for a rainy day, so to speak. And
Right.
if you live here and you raise your kids here, and
Mhm.
15 years from now, when you're getting to throw your kids into college, you're not going to get hit with a nasty road assessment because
Right.
somebody was already thinking.
Yeah, so I want to make a comment because I live on a private road in White Lake Township, and I'm actually the president of our HOA. Not by choice. No one else would do it, so I got pressured into it. But guess what? There is no way that our homeowners association fund has enough money to replace our road, and it is going to need to be done. However, when that day comes, my recommendation to my own association and all of our members is to approach the township and do an SAD. That way the new road is paid for by the people that are going to use that new road. So to create a fund now and build up all this money for a new road doesn't make sense. That should be paid for the people that are going to use that road in the future. So,
But at the same token, you have a roadway that these people have had the benefit of utilizing, and yet we're not holding them responsible to maintain them. So I have a question for you, Craig. You have two specific items you're saying in your master deed and bylaws. One for the annual maintenance of all of these items.
Right, correct.
And you absolutely have another fund for the replacement of these items in the future.
Correct, yeah, that's correct. So we have money, we automatically put money in there for the roads. I mean, because they are private roads, they are going to be responsible. So their association dues, that road would be accounted for in that number. So it'll show, we give them a breakdown of everything we're paying for. And we know exactly what the cost is, obviously, because we just put the road in. So you take that by whatever, 20 years or 25 years down the road, divide it out by the number of homeowners, and you have a number. So that's all we can do, and that's what we do, set it up that way. So, I mean, it's covered on our end.
So what I was thinking of, much like the Michigan Education Fund, if you wait until your grandchildren or your children are ready for college, now you have a $100,000 bill. But if you start when they're born,
Mhm.
start when the development just begins, you
Right.
have the ability to have that interest spread over all these years, and it doesn't hurt nearly as much
Right.
As coming up with all those monies.
And the costs could go up, but at least they'd have something,
Right.
you know, to
So,
put down.
just an idea, guys.
And the other,
Yeah, no, it's good discussion, and I agree with what you're saying on maintenance of the road. But if you're talking actually to start building this fund up to replace the road, you know, for me, if I live there for 20 years and then I move out, I want my money back because I'm not going to get any use for the new road.
So you're putting the future township board at risk of saying 51% of the people want it, 49% of the people don't, or 49% of the people want it, and they just live with bad roads for the next 100 years because they can't get a quorum, they can't get a majority.
Yeah, so
There is something to be said.
Why couldn't you do a township initiative?
Wait
Well,
until
that's a
public
whole-
comments.
yeah,
Wait till a trustee comments.
That's a whole nother.
Thank you for opening that up.
Yeah.
That's a whole other can of worms.
I was going to say too, regarding the retention, that is the lake, obviously. The stormwater goes in the lake. So you're talking about the storm structures, maintaining those.
Correct.
Right, and we would have a maintenance set up for that also.
Eventually, that lake's going to want to be dredged because it's going to beautify. What? Okay, I'm drawing about beautification. So it's going to start getting shallower and shallower, growing the phragmites and everything else, and you're going to have a major issue sometime in the future. So all of that should be taken into account.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, I'm fine with your maintenance. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. But I think what happened with the dredging situation that we're creating the SAAD for, that's on the homeowners association. You know, they could have fixed it on their own. They didn't want to. They came to the township. And I'm fine with that, but as far as paying for all that up front, you know, I just respectfully disagree.
Okay, so the taxes that we charge, those people are not using the township like they should, but somebody in the future may need to use the fire department. So they don't want to pay the taxes for the fire department because they don't need it.
Same argument. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on. I guess what my thought process would be, I think it would be in the best interest of developments in the township that provisions be put in place that some monies be set aside for road, major road infrastructure and improvement.
Yeah, that's a normal procedure for us.
And if you do it as a normal procedure and Mr. O'Neill is fine with it, then I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem. So I would defer to him administratively to make these suggestions and implement it into the master deed.
So, case by case, when he administratively approves the HOA bylaws, we're going to give that authority to Mr. O'Neill then?
I do it now.
He does it now.
But the sum monies, that's going to be in addition to his authority?
I wouldn't say, I would make a recommendation that money be set aside, but I
Okay.
would
We
specify,
cannot-
we won't,
yeah.
I don't know
Gotcha.
that, you know what I mean? It's either you go through a full budget or you just say you should do this and here's a sample budget, which is probably more.
I just wanted clarification.
Mike's
Thank
point
you.
is the same. What if we said, well, you need to put $250 a house away a year for that? And we made the suggestion, they look back and 20 years from now, they go, wow, the township told us that. This road costs up to $1 billion. They're under budget. What the hell were they thinking? No, that's a vicarious liability I don't want the township to carry. But putting money aside, yes, how much and how they care for it, and if they decide to use it for a play structure or whatever they do somewhere along the line and they misspend it, I guess that's on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
There are three items that are high-ticket items that this township really needs to address. Private roads, and I'm in favor of private roads. County roads don't make any sense anymore. It's more of a burden than anything. Storm sewer systems and community septic systems. And so community septic systems mandated by state, in counter to your position, mandated by the state that you must have the funds there in 15 years to replace it, because they don't want a health, safety, and welfare issue coming up 15 years from now. So it's just an issue that we need to address as a township, and it might be good to actually study maybe incorporating that in a development ordinance. So,
okay.
So to me, that would be most beneficial in a workshop
yeah,
situation.
right. You're right on.
That's a conversation for another,
I
a full
agree.
conversation for another day.
Totally agree.
In the meantime, though, I have the utmost confidence in Mr. O'Neill's integrity. Mr. Lilly.
Will you make a motion?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Terry.
Moving on.
Will you make a motion to approve the development agreement subject to the following? Adding language in the development agreement and master deed for the protection of the wetland, maintenance of the infrastructure, and maintenance of the roads, and subject to any other review comments that have not been completed yet.
I'll support that. Mr.
Motion,
Supervisor.
I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you very much.
I
Okay.
just want to
You-
add
yes,
to-
you too,
add to my
Phil.
comment,
Yes,
Rick,
Mr. Lowe.
when I said that I wanted the language put in it, I wasn't trying to be specific of whether they're going to put a dollar amount
Right, no.
to that, just that further proof that they're going to be responsible for those.
And I think Sean knows the point. So, makes sense. Want me to get the vote? You're all set? Thank you. Okay, item 11E, approved fireworks permit application for Cedar Island Homeowners Association. Pretty much a annual event that we seem to be doing. And Mr. Lilly?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the fireworks for Cedar Island Homeowners Association for June 28th, 2019, with a rain date. And as we were going through the information to date, there was some language in there that indicated that 7/12/19 may be a rain date, but I would leave that kind of open, that administratively, if they have to use the rain date, that administratively, that we can approve that.
They have that option. I agree. Those are just very too difficult to predict. I have a motion. I'm looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Mrs. Smith. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Let's have it. 4th of July. Okay, we have the first reading of the Consumers Energy Franchise Renewal Ordinance. I kind of like this one, because it's kind of like, if you don't renew it, you're not going to get gas. They got you over a barrel. Mr. Lilly.
I'll make a motion to move the second reading, the Consumers Energy Ordinance, for the next 30 years. And just for the record, that the previous agreement that the township had was for 30 years.
Which is 30 years, yeah, so,
It
okay.
expires in September, I think, right? September is when.
Yeah, I forget what date it was.
Move it along to second reading. I have
I'll
motion,
support that.
I have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Who supported it? I'm sorry.
Mike
Mr.
Powell.
Powell. Item G, the resolution to opt out of recreational,
No,
I beg your pardon?
yes, you're right, you're right.
Yes,
I'm
that's
sorry.
correct.
No, Counsel?
Yeah, sorry.
Did I catch you?
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No problem, Counsel. Welcome to the human race. A resolution to opt out of recreational marijuana.
We're so used to saying medical marijuana.
I know.
It was like, as soon as he said recreational, I'm like, no. So, as this township board knows, we have new laws in the state of Michigan that allow recreational marijuana. As you know, there are rules and regulations that are being created, drafted, that will govern all recreational marijuana within the state. Except those rules haven't come out yet. Even though it's allowed, those rules that would regulate it hasn't been published yet. We were expecting those rules to be published at the end of the year, which gave the township plenty of time to think about it and to have meetings and to discuss. And unfortunately, we caught wind last week that the rules are expected to come out on June 1st. Once the rules come out on June 1st, then people can start submitting applications 90 days after those rules come out. So
To the state.
to the state to be able to have established recreation establishments for the recreational use of marijuana. The problem, this is a little bit different than the medical marijuana that we dealt with a few years ago, where with medical marijuana, you have to actually opt in order for medical marijuana facilities to have been able to operate in the township. You could do nothing and they wouldn't be able to. It's different with recreational marijuana. You actually have to opt in or out. You can't do nothing. If you do nothing, you've essentially opted in. So at this point, since you really haven't had any meetings, haven't had any discussions on how you want to proceed with it, in light of the timing of the way things are kind of accelerated at this point, we are recommending that the township opt out for now. And we've actually put in the draft ordinance in front of you that while you're opting out today, the township may repeal this ordinance in the future and adopt an ordinance that authorizes it or regulates it in a manner consistent with the law and the administrative rules that come out eventually, and you have an opportunity to look at, review, and absorb. If you are interested in moving forward with this opt-out ordinance, then it would have to have a second reading, so you would move it to second reading and adopt it at the next meeting, if that's your pleasure.
Comments from the board?
Mr. Supervisor?
I said no. She had her
Oh,
hand
I'm
up.
sorry.
No, I didn't. He's.
Oh.
Yeah.
You're supposed to buy into that. Saving us. Okay,
I
go
think
ahead.
this is very wise, since we don't even know what the rules are.
We've got nothing.
There are so many twists and turns on this. I know there's the issue of growing, there's the issue of processing, the issue of distribution centers, selling. It's so complicated that, boy, it'd be nice to have some time to study this instead of jump in with both feet.
I agree,
So, yeah.
and completely, I completely agree, Mike. And my concern is that, Mrs. Smith brought up some points earlier, and we had some conversation that, there are gaps in this law, and we don't really want to be the experiment at the cost of litigation or challenges. I think the state needs to go through its processes, whether it's by procedurally or whether it's by legislation, and work out the kinks, hopefully fill the gaps, and try to make it a little easier for not only our community but other communities throughout the state. We're going to be faced with the same problem.
Yeah.
And we don't even know how to react to it because we don't have the book that says, this is what you're supposed to do. So when you don't have the rule book, best to back away and say, well, when we do have the rule book, then we'll take a look at it and try to figure it out. And then while you're litigating the rules and the rule book, we'll figure it out after that.
Well, and that's an important point also, because your rules and regulations can't conflict with the state's rules and regulations.
Correct.
So even if you tried to adopt an ordinance now saying, okay, we're gonna allow it, but these are our regulations and these are our limitations, when the state comes out with their rules, you'd have to amend yours to be in conformance with the state's rules.
Yeah, we could say you can't put a green cross on the building, and state law could say identifiable by a green cross.
Right.
I mean, hypothetically.
Yeah, yeah.
So and that's what makes me go, Mr.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Mr. Cowell and Mr. Powell. Mike and I had the luxury of doing a seminar at the last MTA conference, and this is exactly what it addressed, recommending the townships opt out until they really get a better feel and we have taken sufficient time to really review and evaluate, what this is, how this is going to be interpreted. So I agree with you guys.
Okay. Any other comments?
No, I mean, just for the public, we had a special meeting on this beforehand, so I just would be repeating myself for the public that there is significant loopholes in this law right now, so it'd be wise for us to wait for state language, and so in the meantime, for us to opt out because there are significant loopholes, so.
Okay, any other conversation? I'd like to entertain a motion to move this on to second reading.
I'll support that.
Okay. Made the motion.
Do we need a roll call for an ordinance?
No,
Oh,
state
need to
motion.
move
I
to
make
second
a motion.
reading.
Second.
That's right.
Mike seconded it.
To opt out?
To
Just
move
make it
on to
clear on
second
the record
reading.
what your motion was.
To
I'm sorry.
adopt, move the ordinance.
To move the ordinance to the second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, ayes have it. Okay. Item H. Counselor?
Item H is dismissal of lawsuit, and this would be in relation to White Lake Township versus Kreiner, Oakland County Circuit Court, case number 2018-169936CZ. Township Board is well aware of this this litigation. This was a complaint the township filed in November of 2018 for various ordinance violations. As with all other matters, our ordinance enforcement officer tried to resolve this short of litigation, was unable to do so. You authorized litigation. A complaint was filed and served late November. Nothing really has happened on this litigation. The reason is the defendant has been working towards compliance, and at this point, I received word from Jason Hudson that he is in full compliance with township ordinances. So at this point, it's up to the township board if you want to proceed with litigation or just dismiss the case at this point, since there hasn't been much going on in the matter. There's been no discovery that's taken place because of the continued cooperation with the township.
Well, seeing as that he is in compliance and Mr. Hudson is satisfied, I would like to make a motion. And I would like to make a motion to authorize the township attorney to dismiss the lawsuit against William Kreiner, Oakland County Circuit Court case number 2018-169936-CZ for the reason that Mr. Kreiner has corrected the violations and is in compliance with the township ordinances. As a motion.
Support your motion.
I have support from Mr. Lilly. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to move along into trustee comments, but before we go to trustee comments, I very much would like to thank our police department. Chief, you're in a bad spot. For all of their efforts that they have that have made our community a very safe community. And you know, we've got accreditation from the Chiefs Association. We're one of only 16 communities out of 600. So that's very notable. We also had an incident here recently, as of this week, where these guys really came together quick and really put things together real quick and did their work. And I won't get too much into it because I know it's a pending investigation. So, you know, my hat's off to all of you. I know that you guys got a habit of wanting new cars, but you got to quit wrecking them. Okay, you know, it's getting expensive.
Oh, it wasn't our fault.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Sean said the same thing. Yeah. So it wasn't. So you know, it wasn't his fault either. You know. So, but let's see if you can make money on that car. Okay. Now he made $75. I want to see if you're going to make money. Yeah. Okay.
Thank God for Allstate.
Yeah. So my thing is Police Week is very important. It's a difficult trade profession, and I know I can say it's the one time I can sit here and say as a board that I know the board appreciates every effort that is made to keep this township safe. I'd also like to call to mind that I think your open house is when?
June 9th.
June 9th?
June 9th.
Yeah, June 9th. So we'd like all the folks to come out and say hello and see what's going on. And every year we seem to be growing a little bit and little different things get added on. So that'll make it more interesting. So we'd like to see you there. Runs from 12 to 4. 3. Okay, 12 to 3. And I want to make sure that that's out there. So for that, I will go into my trustee comments. Ms. Voorhees?
Who likes pancakes and who likes fireworks? I know I do. And May 27th, that's a Monday of Memorial Day, we are having a fundraiser at the White Lake Inn to support the White Lake Citizens League's fireworks. It's all-you-can-eat pancakes from 8:30 to 11:30. It's $7 for adults, $4 for children 10 and under. It's really quite a fun morning when you can eat breakfast at the bar at 8:30 in the morning.
Are they checking ID for the kids, or?
Yes, they are not.
Spiked maple syrup. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Also, I'm a somewhat of an active member of the White Lake Social Club. It is a group of young adults with special needs that meet monthly from 7 to 9. That is on the second Saturday of every month at Dublin Community Center. It is a fun evening. If anyone has kids in that world, please don't hesitate to call me or even show up on the second Saturday of every month from 7 to 9. It's just a fun evening. And also, after the police open house, my other favorite day of that weekend will be Saturday, June 8th. As a true person that tries to be green, that is our No Has Day from 9 to 1 right across the street at Kohl's. All the acceptable items that they're accepting are on our township website. So please come up. I'll say hi. Absolutely, I will say hi and try and get rid of some of our hazardous waste that we have at our house safely.
Very good. Okay. Mrs. Smith.
Okay. So I will also want to start out with Police Week, and I just want to give a proper thank you. So I'd ask if everyone just join me and stand, please, for our police department. Thank you so much. As I mentioned, it's Police Week, and I also want to thank my colleagues and all the residents that joined in and wearing blue this evening. I'm going to count some of your black in here with the black and blue. Right? Yeah, so thank you so much. We're just wearing blue today again to honor our police department. And I'd like to once again ask our community to really step up and continue this week in showing your support. Wonderful examples are if you're part of a church or a book club, you can pray for them. You can talk about ways that you can support them. You can light up your home or car or business blue. Be creative, please. They do enjoy food, so keep dropping off the food. I've heard a lot. They really like the food, so don't be afraid to drop off goodies. But get creative. Like I made them a really neat flower pot to go by their front door and I put their badge on it, and just they don't have a yard, so we can't plant things in honor of them. So maybe one day they'll have a yard that we can do something nice for them. So be creative with your ideas and continue to show your appreciation. There's other things going on in the state. If you're interested, you can go to policeweekmichigan.com, and they also have a Facebook. I'm honored to be a part of the Michigan Police Week Committee. We are now a 501c3. So if you would like to support the cause, you may so on that website, which is policeweekmichigan.com. There's other things going on in the community, like Imagine Theaters in Heartland, I believe, is giving a free movie ticket to any officer with a badge or uniform. So if you have family and friends, not just our department, please spread that around. Tomorrow is National Michigan Police Memorial Day. There will be a ceremony at 11 a.m. in Washington, D.C. that will be televised. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about the police and fire banquet. That was wonderful. We got to all attend and honor our outstanding police and firemen of the year. The CERT team is off and running. We participated at Indian Springs last weekend on a regional mock search. I know Andrea was a victim, and I got to be a searcher, and the Earlies are CERT members, and that was led by Sergeant Jeff Way and Captain Ted Lilly, and they did an outstanding job. As we mentioned, the police open house is Sunday, June 9th. I'd like to welcome my intern fire chief, Chief Marinucci, from across the street here at the fire department. He'll be with us at least for the next 90 days. It's Foster Care Awareness Month. I want to take a chance, just an opportunity to thank all the foster parents out there, myself included. I've been a foster care parent in the past. My heart goes out to all the children and families in that system, and I will regularly continue to call out DHS to do a better job. They're a failure of their audit, and they can do better for our children and families. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. There's no more stigma in mental health. Reach out to anyone here, our police department, our fire department. We're all here for you. There's no stigma in mental health. So please get help if you need help. I want to address something just quickly that was said at the last board meeting. I would appreciate if our township attorney has our undivided attention. I certainly don't mind if our board members, staff, fire, or police speak to her, but past board members and residents shouldn't be emailing or texting our township attorney during board meetings. The library is moving, and their last day was May 4th. Their grand opening is planned for early June, so please pencil that in. It looks like a soft opening might be the 5th or 6th of June, and then a full grand opening is planned for the second week in June. Their summer reading program will be planned as usual and have a summer reading kickoff at the new building. Their next library board meeting is May 22nd at 6:45. I'm not sure of the location, if it'll be in the current or new building, so please check their website if you're interested in attending. The Friends of the White Lake Township Library had a very fun and successful sneak preview event on May 4th. I want to thank everyone who attended and supported. I especially want to thank the exceptional support from the police and fire department and Trustee Voorhees. It was a lot of fun. People are asking for it to be an annual event already, so maybe that's something we will do, and it was a great turnout and a huge success. As library liaison, I want to take a chance to thank our department heads, Brent Bonavere, Sean O'Neill, and Mr. Potter, who was here earlier, for working with me and the library to successfully finish the library building. And I just have a couple more last things here, bear with me. Oh, I wanted to thank our Boy Scout troop that joined us tonight. I'm not sure what troop they are, and they've snuck out a little bit early, but thank you for joining us and the residents as well this evening. And I'll wrap it up with have a safe and happy Memorial Day. Hopefully spring will be here and we can get out on our lakes by then. And it's certainly anticipated some sunshine around here. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Mr. Lilly.
I'd like to just take a moment to thank my election staff of Kathy, Ashley, Kelly, Barb, Dawn, and Elaine, our internal staff for a very successful election. I'd like to also thank all of our election workers. It's a long day, and probably this time it wasn't as busy as usual, but everybody made it, and I want to thank them for their participation. Also want to thank you for the extra time that you take to sit down with the clerk to discuss issues, and I want to thank you for that. It's nice to have a friendly conversation, and it's very helpful. I also want to thank the board for their participation. I know there's a lot of talk that all of us do, but I think proof today of our audit and the direction that we're going in is absolute right direction that the township needs to stay course and move forward, so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I just have two items. First of all, in our consent agenda tonight that really didn't come out to the public, I wanted to thank our staff, our planning staff, and the elected staff that we have, and we were notified that we were granted $1.2 million from the state trust fund for the purchase of the Brendel Lake property, and that's huge. And it'd be very difficult for a particular group to fault this township for not accepting state funds for enhancement of the assets here in the township, and the parks are certainly a major part of that. Granted, we had to have a matching fund. The township's match was about $483,000, but $1.3 million came from the state for an incredible future park, and that's now been consummated, and I think that it'll be on the next agenda for us to sign the final documents, I believe. So congratulations to all of us here in White Lake Township because of that success. The other item that I'd really like to see if this board wouldn't support, and maybe I can work with administration, I believe the Department of Public Services, maybe planning, and certainly myself, I'd very much like to make a presentation to this board, and it'd be great if it could be at a work session. If not, I'd like to be an agenda item, maybe in the next meeting, for the pros and cons of assisting our residents in extending sanitary sewers. There was a gentleman, Eric, from Brendel Lake Heights that was here, and I received another call from someone else in Brendel Lake Heights. We design, and unfortunately, many of our residents spend $30,000 to $40,000 on septic systems that in 20 years are going to fail. What a shame that we can't step up and initiate the installation of sanitary sewers in key areas around the township and then assist those residents in tying into those sanitary sewers. There's really a very easy method to do it. It would just take some initiation from this township board to start that process. I'd love to discuss it with everyone and discuss the pros and cons. There's really no downside because in any presentation and any establishing any initially establishing a special assessment district, there's public hearings. So they'll come, we can discuss it with them, we can discuss the pros and cons with them. If we decide at that time they are not interested, then we can just back off. But we owe it to them to at least initiate that discussion, and we can do that from this board. We don't have to have a poor resident walk around and gain 200 signatures in order to help extend sanitary sewers into the really environmentally sensitive areas of this township. I consider that a shame that we don't step up and assist them in doing that. So I would very much like this board to consider and discuss the pros and cons of assisting people and assisting the extension of sanitary sewers. So thank you, board, and I look forward to discussing that with you in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Roman.
Thanks, Mr. Supervisor. First, want to thank all the residents for attending today. Appreciate it. Want to let everyone know that I will be posting my annual treasurer's report onto the website, treasurer section of the website. This will be the 2018 annual report. I always like to wait until after the audit in case there's anything I want to address in it, but you know, ever since I've been here, we've always gotten an A+ from the auditors. So we are in good shape. If you do want to check out the annual report on the website, there's a link. You click it. But this report will tell you a little bit about how I invest our township funds, what types of investment vehicles I use. Excuse me. Summarizes the use of FDIC insurance to protect our funds. It goes into a little bit about the yields that I've been earning on the investments. Goes into independent ratings that I've gotten on our financial institutions. And it also talks a little bit about the funding of our legacy costs. So I just wanted you all to know that that is out there. Second, I wanted to pass on my sincerest thank yous to my senior treasury specialist, Amy Curtis. Amy's been working for White Lake Township for 18 years now. She will be retiring at the end of the month. In the 7 years that I've been here, I have never seen Amy get upset with the resident one time. So Amy, thank you for all of your service to White Lake Township. You are going to be dearly missed. That's all I had, Rick.
Very good. Very good. Well, it's kind of interesting when we have an opportunity to have our report card put out there. You know, I don't have my mom and dad to go to get them to sign it anymore, and there's no hiding this one. You know, I never did that, you know. But it never. You know.
It's all electronic now, anyway.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Back in the day. But the efforts that the township has taken over its history and in particular the last several years is to try to plan for the future as much as possible. Try to be as careful as we can with the monies that we have. We are a very fortunate community that we are experiencing considerable growth, which is one of the reasons led to my comment about setbacks on Union Lake Road. There are some things that are inevitable. Traffic is one of them with this growth. Hopefully the Road Commission will recognize some of these issues. There has been meetings that we've just recently had with the strategic planning with the Road Commission, and we try to get them to realize the importance. Mr. Lilly and I attended the meetings and try to get them to realize the importance of Elizabeth Lake Road and Union Lake Road in particular, because those are extensions essentially of the M5 corridor. I had a number of people that just average citizens, they figured it out, they know what's going on. So the Road Commission obviously knows about it, and they have to work as diligently as they can to try to come up with some solutions to this. we're going to see over 400 residences in that corridor in the next year and a half to 2 years. That's going to make a significant difference in the number of people going to the store, going out to eat, taking the kids to school, and doing all the other trips. So these are things that are extremely important from not only a congestion standpoint, but a safety standpoint. When you add that many more driveways on a road, there's so much going on, there's always an opportunity that someone, it could become a tragedy. So the safety is extremely important. I was very interested to hear from the auditor's own report that we had a little extra money in the can, so to speak. I have spent my time diligently trying to go after every dime I can get anywhere that I can with any connection. The 1.3 million is a direct result of going out, networking, meeting people, literally going to a room packed so full of people that I couldn't even see straight. Mr. Roman was with me.
I couldn't hear a word either.
Yeah.
The next thing I know, Rick comes running up and says, I think I got some money. And kudos to you.
And,
Seriously.
well, it was, it was an effort on everybody's part, and Sean and the guy and the guys and the gals. But in this case, now we got a lady in our department, which is welcome. That really hustled because we had such a small window, and normally you could not pull off what these guys pulled off, and they really get the credit. It was easy for me to go, hey, I made the connections and da-da-da-da-da. Now we all got to get down to work and make it happen. We are into our final stage of discovery on the property, where appraisals will start to happen in the next couple of weeks. The Township Board graciously gave me permission to spend the money to do that. Jason and myself did get competitive bids, but there's a very specific list of individuals. They don't just allow any appraiser. You have to be approved on the DNR, or now the Great Lakes. Yeah, the people there, the Lansing people. Yeah, they have to be on that list. So that's moving forward. Now that we're coming into summer and we're going about our lives, we need to take and be that much more aware of what's going on in our community to maintain the safety that we have in this community. And being a neighbor doesn't necessarily mean you're being nosy, but being neighborly is a good thing. And we have a growing population of seniors in our community, and it's always a good thing to get to kind of know them, because some of them have a spouse, some of them are a surviving spouse, and they may not necessarily always have the ability to have some conversation, a friendly hello, a little smile. Just try to be neighborly and always kind of watch out for them, because at one point in time, they were someone's parent watching out for them. So us as residents in this community need to reach out and watch out to them. And I have a 92-year-old mother-in-law is going through some issues right now, so I appreciate her more because she's the only one I have left.
Yeah.
And it's something that you think about, and I just want people to think about a little bit more. I'm privileged and honored to be here, to be a part of this community and be in the position I'm in of leadership, but I could not do anything that I am doing without the help of this board and legal counsel. And I'm glad that she's back and she's healthy. That's a big plus. So with that, I say good night, God bless, and looking for a motion to adjourn.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. Since you've come on, Rick, I've seen millions now come into this township in the form of grants, and it is a direct result of your aggressive behavior and going after that money.
Aggressive behavior.
Don't change that.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
Support.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
Did you get on that?
Next time your wife tells you to shut up, don't make a mistake.